In 1974, Johnny Carson did something on live television that he had never done in 30 years of broadcasting. He cried, not a subtle tear quietly wiped away. Johnny Carson broke down completely in front of 20 million Americans. And it all started because of a barefoot 12-year-old boy holding a guitar wrapped in duct tape. But here is what no one knew that night. Just hours before the cameras rolled, Johnny Carson had received a phone call that shattered him. His younger brother had died alone in a rundown apartment, trapped in the same poverty Johnny had escaped decades ago. The guilt was crushing him. He had spent his entire career becoming America's favorite entertainer while his own brother suffered in silence. And Johnny had done nothing. That evening, he was supposed to smile. He was supposed to make America laugh like he always did. But fate had something different planned because at that exact moment, security guards were dragging a homeless child across the studio floor. A child who had snuck into NBC with nothing but a broken guitar and a desperate dream. A child whose story would mirror Johnny's own painful past so perfectly that it would break through every wall the legendary host had ever built. What happened over the next 15 minutes became the most watched moment in tonight's show history. It was replayed for decades. It made grown men weep. It changed broadcasting forever. But more importantly, it changed two lives in ways nobody could have predicted. The boy's name was Danny Hernandez. And he was about to teach Johnny Carson and all of America a lesson about courage, pain, and the terrifying power of giving someone a chance. But before we get there, you need to understand how a homeless child ended up standing on the most famous stage in America. If you believe in stories that restore your faith in humanity, stay with me. This one will stay with you forever. Danny Hernandez had not eaten in 2 days. The February wind cut through his thin jacket like razors as he sat outside Radio City Music Hall, his frozen fingers barely able to form chords on his battered guitar. He was 12 years old, but his eyes carried the weight of someone who had already seen too much of life's cruelty. 3 years earlier, Danny had a home. He had a mother who sang to him every night. She worked double shifts at a textile factory, but she always found time to sit beside his bed, stroking his hair and telling him that music was magic. She had saved for 6 months to buy him a second-hand guitar from a pawn shop. It was scratched and worn, but to Danny, it was treasure. Then the factory fire happened. 37 workers lost their lives that night, including Maria Hernandez. Danny was 9 years old. He had no father, no relatives willing to take him. The foster system swallowed him, spit him out, and eventually he ran. Living on the streets seemed better than the places that called themselves homes. For 3 years, he survived by playing guitar. Subway stations, street corners, outside theaters where wealthy people walked past without seeing him. His mother's guitar was falling apart, held together now by tape and prayers. But he refused to abandon it. It was all he had left of her. Every night he whispered the same promise into the darkness. "Mama, I will make you proud. Someone will hear me. Someone will listen." That freezing February evening, Danny watched well-dressed people streaming into NBC studios for The Tonight Show. Through the glass doors, he glimpsed warm lights, laughter, everything that had been stolen from him. A crazy thought entered his mind. What if he could get inside? What if Johnny Carson heard him play? His mother had always said music could open any door. Danny spotted a delivery entrance. Chaos everywhere, staff rushing, nobody watching. His heart pounded as he slipped through the gap, clutching his guitar like a lifeline. He had no idea that inside that building, Johnny Carson was fighting his own demons, and their collision was about to create television history. What Danny did not know was that Johnny had once been exactly like him. And that secret was about to surface in the most unexpected way. Keep watching. This story is just getting started. Inside Studio One, Johnny Carson sat behind his famous desk, performing the role he had perfected for 3 decades. The smile, the charm, the effortless wit that made America fall in love with him every night. But tonight, the smile was a mask. Behind his eyes, something was breaking. The phone call had come at 4 that afternoon. His brother, Harold Carson, had been found dead in a halfway house in Nebraska, alone, forgotten, still trapped in the same cycle of poverty and despair that Johnny had clawed his way out of as a young man. They had not spoken in over a decade. Johnny had been too busy being famous to notice his brother drowning. Now Harold was gone, and the guilt was suffocating. Johnny had grown up dirt poor in Norfolk, Nebraska. His father had been a cruel man who told Johnny Daly Alley that he was worthless, that dreamers ended up in gutters. Johnny had spent his entire life proving that wrong, building an empire of success and celebrity. But in doing so, he had left his brother behind. He had run so far from his past that he forgot the people still trapped in it. Tonight, 20 million people expected him to be funny. He did not know if he could do it. Then the commotion started. Shouts erupted from the wings of the stage. Security guards appeared, dragging a small figure across the polished floor. The audience gasped. Johnny's head snapped toward the noise, his professional instincts taking over. But what he saw stopped him cold. A boy, barefoot, clothes torn and dirty, clutching a guitar that looked like it might fall apart at any moment. The child was fighting against the guards, not violently, but desperately, his eyes wild with fear and something else. Determination. In that instant, Johnny Carson saw himself. 50 years ago, a poor kid from Nebraska who dreamed of being somebody. A kid whose father said he would never amount to anything. A kid who needed just one person to believe in him. Johnny stood up from his desk. The audience fell silent. His producer was signaling frantically to continue the show. But Johnny was not looking at his producer. He was looking at the boy. Something shifted in his chest. Something that had been buried for decades. Before he could stop himself, Johnny Carson spoke 6 words that would change everything. "Bring that boy to me." The studio went completely silent. What was Johnny about to do? And why did this homeless child affect him so deeply? Like and subscribe if you want to see what happens next. This moment changed television forever. The security guards released Danny immediately. The boy stood frozen in the middle of the stage, trembling under the harsh studio lights. 300 audience members stared at him. Cameras pointed at him like weapons. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his legs would not move. Then Johnny Carson did something unprecedented. He walked out from behind his desk, crossed the stage and knelt down so he was eye level with the terrified child. The legendary host, the king of late night, kneeling before a homeless street kid, the audience barely breathed. "What is your name, son?" Johnny asked. His voice was gentle, completely different from his usual television persona. "Danny. Danny Hernandez." The words came out cracked and shaking. "Danny, why did you come here tonight?" The boy looked down at his ruined guitar, then back up at the famous face before him. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. "Music can open any door. I wanted someone to hear me play, sir. My mama always said if I played good enough, someone would listen. She said music was magic." He paused, his voice breaking. "She died when I was 9. This was her guitar. I promised her I would make someone listen." The audience was completely silent. Several women had already started crying. Ed McMahon sat frozen at the announcer's desk, his hand covering his mouth. Doc Saintson lowered his trumpet, watching with glistening eyes. But Johnny Carson's reaction was what no one expected. His composure shattered. The mask he had worn for 30 years cracked completely because he understood this boy in a way no one else in that studio could. Johnny had grown up with nothing. His father had crushed every dream he ever had. Music and performing had been his escape, his salvation. And today, the brother he had abandoned had died alone because Johnny had been too successful, too important, too busy to help. Now here stood a boy just like he had been. A boy with nothing except a broken guitar and a dead mother's dream. Johnny placed his hands on Danny Unkys shoulders. His voice came out thick with emotion that 20 million viewers had never heard before. "Danny, I grew up poor, desperately poor. My father told me every single day that I was worthless, that I would end up in a gutter. I spent my whole life running from where I came from." He paused, struggling to maintain control. "Today, I found out my brother died alone. He never escaped the poverty I left behind. I abandoned him. I was so busy becoming somebody that I forgot the people who needed me." Johnny looked directly into the camera. Tears were now visible on his face. America's favorite entertainer was crying on live television. "I cannot change what happened to my brother, but I can do something right now. Right here." He turned back to Danny. "Son, you came here to be heard. I am listening. Play for me. Play for everyone watching. Show America what you have got." Danny stared at him in disbelief. His hands trembled as he lifted his mother's guitar, the instrument that had kept him alive through 3 years of hell. The last connection to the woman who believed in him. He closed his eyes. He thought of his mother's voice and he began to play. What happened next became the single most emotional moment in television history. "Stay right here." The first notes were fragile, hesitant, shaking with fear. But as Danny Unk's fingers found their rhythm, something extraordinary happened. The fear melted away. The studio, the cameras, the audience, everything disappeared. There was only the music and the memory of his mother smiling at him in the darkness. Danny played a melody he had written himself during his first winter on the streets. He had been huddled in a doorway, starving, frozen, certain he would not survive until morning. But he had played anyway because playing meant his mother was still with him. The song was about loss, about promises, about believing in tomorrow. Even when today offered nothing but pain. Then Daddy began to sing. His voice was not polished. It was raw, broken, carrying every ounce of suffering he had endured. But it was pure. It was honest. It was the kind of voice that reaches past offenses and grabs the human heart directly. The audience sat motionless. Tears flowed openly. Hardened New Yorkers wept without shame. Doc Saintson covered his face. Ed McMahon sobbed audibly. But it was Johnny Carson who captured the moment that would be replayed for 50 years. The king of late night stood at the edge of his desk, tears streaming down his face, making no attempt to hide them. In 30 years of broadcasting, America had never seen Johnny Carson cry. He was the master of composure. The man who could handle anything. But this boy's music reached something beyond his control. When the final note faded, silence held the studio for 5 eternal seconds. Then the audience erupted. Every single person rose to their feet. The applause was deafening, primal, filled with an emotion that transcended entertainment. This was not appreciation for a performance. This was recognition of something sacred. Johnny walked to Danny and placed both hands on the boy's shoulders. His voice, broadcast to 20 million homes, was barely a whisper. "That was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard on this stage." He turned to face America directly. "This boy came here tonight with nothing but courage and a dream. He reminded me of something I forgot. It does not matter where you come from. It matters who reaches back to help you." He looked at Danny with absolute conviction. "I'm going to help you, son. Starting right now." Then Johnny Carson made a promise on live television that would change everything. What he did next shocked the entire nation, and it was only the beginning. Comment below if this story is touching your heart. Share it with someone who needs hope today. Johnny Carson looked directly into the camera and spoke words that would be quoted for generations. "This boy is not going back to the streets. Not tonight. Not ever. I am personally taking responsibility for Danny Hernandez. He will have a home. He will have an education. He will have every opportunity to share his gift with the world." The audience gasped. This was unprecedented. A television host adopting a homeless child on live broadcast. But Johnny was not finished. He removed his iconic suit jacket and draped it over Danny Unk's thin shoulders. Then he knelt again, looking directly into the boy's eyes. "Danny, your mother was right. Music is magic. And tonight, your magic saved me just as much as I hope to help you." Danny collapsed into Johnny's arms, sobbing. 3 years of pain, 3 years of loneliness, 3 years of clinging to a dead woman's dream. It all poured out in that embrace. Johnny kept every promise. He became Danny Unk's legal guardian, welcoming him into his home with his wife, Joanna. He enrolled Danny in the finest music school in New York. He hired master guitar instructors. He personally attended every recital, every performance, every milestone. But Johnny did more than save one boy. The overwhelming public response inspired him to establish the Carson Youth Music Foundation. Within 5 years, the foundation provided instruments, lessons, and scholarships to over 50,000 underprivileged children across America. When reporters asked why he had done it, Johnny's answer was simple. "I spent my career making people laugh. Danny taught me that making a difference matters more. Every child deserves someone who believes in them. If nobody else will be that person, I will." But Danny's story was far from over. What he became will leave you speechless. Today, Danny Hernandez is one of the most respected music producers in Los Angeles. His studio has launched dozens of successful artists. He has won 3 Grammy Awards, but his greatest achievement has nothing to do with trophies. Every year, Danny returns to the streets of New York where he once played for coins. He searches for young musicians struggling to survive. When he finds them, he offers the same gift Johnny Carson gave him, a chance. The Danny Hernandez Foundation has helped over 10,000 young musicians escape poverty through education and opportunity. On his studio wall hangs a framed photograph from February 1974. A barefoot boy in torn clothes standing beside Johnny Carson. Both of them crying. Both of them transformed. Next to it is a handwritten note Johnny gave him on his 18th birthday. "Danny, you did not just change your life that night. You changed mine. Never forget that one moment of courage can rewrite everything. Love, Johnny." Johnny Carson passed away in 2005, but his legacy lives through every child Danny helps. As Danny often says in interviews, "Johnny taught me that truly listening to someone can save their life. Now I spend my life listening." Some moments become television legend, but the greatest moments become something more. They become hope. If this story moved you, share it, subscribe, and comment below. Because somewhere out there, another Danny is waiting for someone to believe in them. Maybe that someone is you.